So, Peter, nice to see you here in Belgrade. I wanted to talk a bit about, the investment climate. Obviously, everything has been depressed by economic slowdown in Russia, Eastern Europe on one side, and then the political turmoil with the Ukrainian situation. So, what are the outlets for the market? I mean, stock prices have never been any cheaper, but people are not investing. Where do you think we go from here?
I think it is maybe a turning point for the stock market in a way that we have seen, if you look at the big market in Eastern Europe, which is Russia, we have seen the market coming down slowly from really March 2011 when it had its second peak after May 2008. And from that peak until mid-March, the market was down about 50%. And actually, since then it's been rebounding a bit, and we start to see interest now again. And maybe it was really all these events that triggered interest, but it was actually, while it's been sliding down gradually, it hasn't really been in the focus, but all of a sudden it got the attention of the investors. So it actually might have been the trigger.
Do you think the prices are justified? I mean, that the political risk is obviously being added in there. Because at the end of the day, the country is continuing to grow and, structural reforms are going ahead, albeit slowly, and companies are investing. I'm talking about things like retail, the ones connected to the, sort of, the nuts and bolts of the economy.
Yes, I think that's a fair remark, and I think that's what's really have given a bit of more attention to the market as well, because as we saw the first quarter numbers coming in, as we saw the proposals for increased dividends for a lot of the AGMs, I think the confidence in the market actually came back. So I think that is it's good, and what we see is very much business as usual for most of the companies.
Do you think this crisis is different from the others? I mean, we're veterans of the market. I mean, I think this is my 8th crisis. And they're horrible, but we recover and come out the other side. However, this one has a very unusual political tinge to it, and some people are suggesting that permanent damage has been done with Russia's relationship to the West, and that might have a knock-on effect.
Yes, but it is different in one way, or in many ways, I would say. One is that actually it started already early in the year with the weakness of some of the emerging market currencies, which hit the ruble quite hard, quite a lot, which was surprising, I think, looking at it. Secondly, we have all the troubles with turmoil of Ukraine, which added on to the negative performance of the stock market and the perception of the whole situation. But what is interesting as well is to see that the world is in a recovery phase. Normally, Russia is doing well when the world is doing well. So this is different in the sense that all the world around Russia now is doing nicely, and the Russian stock market took a big dive, and now the country.
And what about the new relationship with China? Again, some people have been pointing at that and saying it's a fundamental strategic relationship, whereas before it's been a mercantile relationship largely based on trade. Although, the synergy between Russia's need for raw materials and China's need for raw materials and Russia's ability to supply them makes a lot of sense. Now they're building this sort of multi-billion dollars worth of immovable infrastructure. That suggests that their relationship has moved from simple sending gas and oil and metal to China to something a bit more significant. Do you think that's going to make a difference?
I think it will make a difference in the long term. I think I've always been surprised in the way how dependent Russia has been on Europe in its gas sales and oil sales. And I think it's been an interesting, when you view the debate in Western Europe, everyone is talking that there's such a big dependence on Russian oil and gas. But actually, I think Russia has a much higher dependence on Europe. So I think this in a way, it's strange that this didn't happen much earlier.
Yeah.
But now, when it happened, I think it will be more. But still, it's going to be such a small part of the total export. So I think the only way we will see more of this going forward.
How would you characterize Russia's relationships with Europe now? Because clearly the fight on principle with Washington is very clear. However, the messages we get coming out, particularly of Berlin, are much more mixed. There's the politics of stand together with your allies on the one side, and then there's the pragmatism of the large German companies who are already heavily committed. Do you think there's going to sort of be a fudge through and a slow return to normal, or not?
I think that's our basic scenario, really, that we think it will be very much coming back to normal. I think the sanctions were not maybe as severe as many have feared, including us. And with that behind us, which I think is behind us now. I think it's very much trying to work on the circumstances we have right now, and very much business as usual.
And the implications for Central Europe, because they're kind of caught between the two. I mean, the EBRD identified Russia as an investment node, so its economy, the fate of its economy, has a big impact on Central Europe. But as you say, Western Europe is recovering, and that's also a large market. You know,
yes, and Central Europe is so much tied to the recovery of the Eurozone. So I think the key for Central Europe is really the Eurozone. If we see continued recovery there, where there has been some doubts recently, if the recovery is as strong as we would have hoped, that would be good for Central Europe, but then the hiccups on the way will be bad.
And Southeast, I mean, here we are in Belgrade, and I must say I've been impressed by the companies that I've seen, but I do get the sense that, you know, they've had so many more problems during the transition than some countries to the east. It seems to me that these countries are sort of 10 years behind where Russia was in terms of their stage of development. But that also means, you know, if the investment story follows that of Russia, you know, they've got another 10 years of fast catch-up, and there's some really big opportunities here. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, there's this market where we are right now in Serbia, it's by far the cheapest in the region, and I think it's really interesting. We spent yesterday in Bucharest, and when you come from Bucharest, it's been 7 years now in the EU, and we went to Belgrade and compare. It's clear how much the EU accession has benefited Romania as a country, and I think we can see similar developments here as well if Serbia continues the path they have started towards the EU.
But it doesn't always work. I mean, again, I think Romania stands out as a real success story, and they really seem to have thrown themselves at the task of reforms. But Bulgaria is, you know, sort of fellow in the EU and has done much less well. Why do you think that is?
I think it is really the political will. You need to have a really strong political will to do the transformation. And it's so many times it's about leadership. I think like what I'm investing into a country or to a company, it's the same thing. It's about the leadership of the country or the company.
So looking around the region that you invest into here in emerging Europe, there are obviously very different stories. Where do you think is the most interesting places to go at the moment?
I think there's really two investment destinations that stand out at the moment. One is Russia, from a valuation point of view. It really looks very interesting, and it's starting to see some momentum at the moment on the flows of the interest back in that country. And number two is what you would call frontier emerging Europe. This is really the area where we are right now.
Which of the frontier markets in particular?
Romania, Serbia, and Lithuania, Estonia. I would categorize as the most interesting one.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for taking the time.